2021, we have a number of challenges ahead of us, and I think within labour exploitation and modern slavery and what's happening in Scotland, we have seen the numbers increase. But what we can't forget that sexual exploitation is still has a huge impact on the victims and in Scottish society. So I'm delighted to welcome Bronagh Andrew from Tara, who are contracted with the Scottish Government to provide the support and services to those victims. Now, I'll not ask anymore or talk anymore. I'd like to ask Bronagh. So, Bronagh, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Bronagh, our paths have crossed over the years, and I think it's, my focus has been in raising awareness of labour exploitation in Scotland, and I think I've got caught up in all that, and sometimes I forget, sadly, that there's another far more sinister, not far more sinister, but a sinister element to what goes on out there. Can you tell me about what you do at Tara? What is Tara?
So Tara, we're funded by the Scottish Government to support women who've been trafficked for commercial sexual exploitation. So by that, in the main, that reflects prostitution, but also women trafficked for online sexual exploitation, potentially webcamming, stripping, pornography. So we would support women where they've been exploited to meet the demands of the sex industry and they've been identified or recovered in Scotland. We've been providing this service since 2005, and I've been involved in the work of the project since 2004, so just before the support service geared up.
And tell me, so from a victim perspective, how have you statistically, what have you seen since 2004 then, since you've been involved?
So since that time, we have seen a growth in the number of women identified and referred to our service. I think the very first year we started providing a direct service, we had, I think, 9 women identified and referred to us for support. And in kind of the last financial year, so 2020, 2021, we provided support to 95 women in total throughout the year. So each year we have seen a steady increase in the number of women where concerns have been flagged to us and they've been referred to our service for support.
And tell me, Rona, then, what do you think's driven that? Because, it sounds like a very low number of 9, and a big jump. But is there something behind that? Is it awareness? Is it more of it going on? Or?
That's really difficult to answer. I think one of the the challenges around human trafficking and exploitation is to get that kind of a core statistical understanding. We only know what we know, and the only kind of useful statistics that we have at the minute are statistics that come through the national referral mechanism.
Yeah.
But those are only as good as the number of people being identified and referred in to that system. So while we've seen a growth that I think is about frontline services being a bit more aware of what to look out for and aware of the supports that are in place. I think we're still just seeing the tip of the iceberg. I think there's many more people who are being held and exploited and many more women who are being sexually exploited out there that we simply haven't been able to identify.
And importantly, Rona, the national referral mechanism is what's put in place where the first responder recognises that there's signs or there's an issue or concerns, and once that's reported in Scotland, if it's a victim of, it tends to be if it's a victim of labour exploitation, migrant help.
Right. Yep.
We'll pick that up, and if it's sexual exploitation, it'll be Tara. So again, as Bronagh says, that's really important about those people at the front line being able to spot the signs. Can I ask you, if I think about what we would look at, at Brightwork and my work about spotting the signs, if we were looking to see if somebody was a victim of labour exploitation, we actually did a recent kind of a roundtable on domestic abuse as well and spotting the signs. And what really struck me is the similarities of what we're looking for. Can you tell anyone that's listening or watching what would be the signs and what, as an individual, what are you looking for here to see if there's somebody who's been exploited for sex?
I think it is difficult, but I think you're quite right about the similarities around what we know about domestic abuse and women who are living with domestic abuse. So for Tara, some of the signs that would kind of indicate that there was prostitution occurring would be a number of women in the same flat who don't seem to go out very much, who are very wary about making eye contact or having any conversations with neighbours. Also flats where it seems to be that there are different women every couple of weeks, and there's kind of almost like a turnover of women there. And so for us, for members of the public, those would be the core signs. For frontline staff, that are more, it's potentially easier for them to ask questions and pull out some indicators. So things around not having their identity documents, some specific indicators around health concerns that might be present. Women who are kind of, they might have some makeup on, but other than that, they're a bit unkempt as well. So those are kind of some of the signs to look out for, where women are particularly wary of eye contact, and maybe kind of building a relationship with neighbours.
And it's I think that's fairly topical. I think there's people who suspect there may be activity going on in and around their neighbourhoods and probably don't know what to look for, and that's some good indicators as well that you've mentioned there. There's something. Sorry, I'm going to jump around here, Bronagh, because you've been doing this job for a long time, and I have to say that knowing of some of the stories myself, it's hard. It's really hard. You're on the real front line and supporting some of these poor poor people that have gone through real suffering, been hugely exploited, and lost a lot, through their own self-worth. But you've been doing this, as I said, for a long time. What drives you to do what you're doing, Bronagh?
So the people that are doing the very hard work are our frontline caseworkers. We have a small team of 3 frontline caseworkers and a manager who provide that ongoing support for women. And we also have a team of 5 who do our out of hours response. So, and we cover all of Scotland. So we're a small team. But what I can say is what keeps the team going is that we are privileged to see women begin to recover and move on with their lives. So hearing their stories at the beginning, which are often very hard and very traumatic, we can hold that and we can work with that, because ultimately we see women's hope begin to come back, and we see women's resilience and determination to achieve what they originally set out to achieve, which was a better life for themselves or for their children and families. And we are privileged to work with women throughout that process of recovery and get them on a solid foundation to really take the next step and really begin to flourish.
You're just kind of in a nutshell, it's you're there's a satisfaction from supporting these women from where they've been to where they want to go, and you take them on that journey at Tara, Bronagh, and you're a significant part of that. I know you're quite humble here, what you're saying, but a significant part of that.
Yeah, I think so, and I think we talk about we work with women. So we work with women to help them feel safe. And then once they begin to feel safe and they begin to trust us as a service and trust some of the systems that are in place to protect them, we really just work with women to help her identify what she wants to do next and to put her in a situation where she feels able to make choices. And we'll support her with those, and we'll walk beside her on her journey as she grows in confidence to be able to make those choices. We've had women when they come to us at first, aren't feel overwhelmed when you ask them if they want a drink of water, or if you give them a choice between, do you want a tea or a coffee? They're almost overwhelmed in that, because all of their ability to make choices has been removed from them. And over time, it's really, really positive and helpful, and really positive for us as a service to see women grow in confidence. And I was just thinking about, in advance of having a chat with you, I was just thinking about some of the signs that we look out for about how women are doing. And one of the kind of the core indicators that the team look out for is when women begin to challenge us, and they begin to ask us questions and say, why are you asking me to do that? What's that about? Or they're beginning to kind of push back and say, no, I can do this myself. And for us, that's an indicator. Challenging us as a service is an indicator that she feels confident to do that, and she's beginning to feel more independent and confident, and as she goes forward.
That's a very good way of putting it. Once they're pushing back to you,
Yeah,
you know that they're on the road to improving.
exactly.
And a thing that you've just mentioned there is choices. So they've not been able to make any choices. So actually, like you said there, a choice between a tea or a coffee or would you like a glass of water is overwhelming. Just shows you how badly affected some of these poor people are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, a lot of the women that we support, and quite often they come from countries where women are viewed very much as second-class citizens, and that has been their life from birth, is that they've been disempowered and they've not had that ability to kind of make choices or strike out on their own because of the culture that they've been brought up in. So for us, that's the trauma of what's happened to them whilst they've been trafficked and exploited, just builds on that trauma they've experienced almost from childhood on. So we're privileged to see women go on that journey, and we don't do it all by ourselves. We link in closely with other partners to help us help women achieve that.
Wow. Well, it's a bit of an eye opener for me, and I must say, Bronagh, I've been involved in this in the labour exploitation area for a number of years now, and I'm still learning. But what you're talking about here is really eye opening. So, thank you. So that's so I think that when we talk about Scotland against modern slavery now, and what we're trying to do is that it's about raising awareness and what signs to look for, how you can support, and what a business can do, and that's kind of where. But there's we've talked about individuals, what we can do as human beings on the planet. Um, what do you think? If as from a business perspective, what can a business do to support and help you on your journey? Your organisation.
I think continue to raise awareness. So to kind of raise awareness within their organisation about human trafficking and exploitation, and get them use kind of staffing groups to get that message out to friends and families, and almost kind of do that an informal network of spreading kind of that information. I think one of the things that we still see whenever, or when we used to get out and about across
Yeah.
Scotland, but now kind of online,
Yeah.
is that often there's still those myths about, oh, trafficking for sexual exploitation, that's just a city problem. That doesn't happen in our rural area. And that's simply not the case. For oh gosh, for over 10 years, we've had referrals from across Scotland, from small villages that you would be the length and breadth of the country. So it's not just a city problem. Anywhere where women are being exploited within the sex industry, there'll be women trafficked to meet that demand, and that demand's not just located in cities, that's across Scotland. And I think for all types of exploitation, there still remains a myth that, oh, that happens abroad or that happens in big cities. It doesn't. It happens across our communities, and all of our communities are touched by that. And businesses are part of those communities. So it's not just about ensuring their businesses are ethical, it's also about using their position within communities to get information out to the general public.
That's a very good way of putting it, and I think there's um, uh, you mentioned there about that people people have said to me about labour exploitation. Oh, it doesn't happen here. That happens in Birmingham, or it happens in Leicester or London, or more recently in Glasgow. But actually, what we're seeing is victims consistently in some of the most rural areas of Scotland, most picturesque, beautiful areas of Scotland, and we've had victims in every local authority area? There's not one local authority area in Glasgow that's not, I'm sorry, in Scotland that's not been affected?
No, no, I would agree. There's not a single part of Scotland that's not touched by human trafficking and exploitation, and that there hasn't been somebody exploited within that local authority area. So we've had referrals from colleagues up in Inverness, from colleagues in Dumfries and Galloway, Garland Butte, across the country. And yes, the majority of kind of referrals are generated in the central belt. But there's a significant minority spread across the country.
It's and it's quite a clear picture. It was quite a clear statement that you've made, and I 100% understand what you're saying. Tell me then. So, in your experience, I've heard of and learnt around the value of a human, unfortunately, and we're talking about this is all about money. This is about it's a business that's going on, and this is what leads to trafficking and sexual exploitation and labour exploitation. In your experience, have you seen crossovers between the labour exploitation and the sexual exploitation before?
Very much so. We work very closely with migrant help, and to make sure that women are getting services that they need. But certainly for Tara, we have many women who were criminally exploited and were then sexually exploited as well. But we've also had women who have been exploited for their labour in nail bars, and then during the day, and then in the evenings and nighttime, they are sexually exploited as well. Women who are exploited for their labour are also are at a higher risk of sexual violence as well from others. So it gets very kind of complex, but ultimately, I think you probably heard from the other guests that you've had on, Shan, is traffickers view that individual as a commodity, and however they can sell that individual again and again and again and profit from them, they will do that. They're seen as a commodity for their use and for their profit. So traffickers will absolutely use women in any means they can to maximise their income from that abuse.
Absolutely, and that's the money is at the core of all of this, and profitability, and how traffickers, the criminal element of it, don't see them as being humans. They're a commodity.
Absolutely, and it's profiting off vulnerability. It's making money because some people are vulnerable, and it's a horrific and inhumane practice.
Okay, Bronagh, if somebody's listening, as we're coming to the close here, somebody's listening as an individual and they suspect some sort of activity that may constitute sexual exploitation, what should they do? Who should they contact?
I think if they have concerns, they absolutely should contact. If they have immediate concerns, it's contact Police Scotland. If they're not very sure, Tara, we would be happy to talk through concerns with an individual. People could report anonymously to Crime Stoppers. But I would suggest in the first instance to contact the UK Modern Slavery Helpline. They operate 24/7 and they're really designed. I think when we start, we don't get calls from members of the public very often, but when we do, it always starts off with, I don't want to trouble you. And the Modern Slavery Helpline is designed to be a place specifically for that, where you're not troubling anybody. And by contacting them, their staff can talk through that situation with you and either report it on your behalf or help you kind of work out who best to contact in the situation.
Fantastic.
So see something, say something, basically, I think, and the Modern Slavery Helpline is a good way to have the confidence to do that.
Great. Okay, so following this podcast, we'll put the link on for Modern Slavery Helpline and also for Tara, for anyone that has any concerns. Can I ask you as well, curiosity, Tara, tell me what it stands for. What does it mean?
So TARA stands for Trafficking Awareness Raising Alliance, but what we really wanted was a simple name for our service. So before we were TARA, we were the counter trafficking pilot project.
Okay, that's a big one, yeah.
It's a bit of a mouthful,
Yeah,
and also a bit of a mouthful if English isn't your first language.
of course. Yeah.
And it was also when we didn't want women having counter trafficking projects stored in their phones. So it's a simple and fairly anonymous way for women to have our contact details. If anyone was scrolling or checking their phones, Tara's the woman's name. It doesn't instantly, or it didn't then, didn't instantly give the game away that you were in contact with a service.
Brilliant. Okay, Bronagh, it's been delightful talking to you about the work that you do as an individual, the work the organisation does, and supporting some of the most vulnerable in our society and the most exploited. So you've opened my eyes yet again. It's something that thinking I wasn't as fully aware as all the work that Tara does. So thank you so much for your time.
It's
It's
been
been a
my
pleasure.
pleasure. Thank you.